Assalamu alaikum. And to those of you who have other greetings, greetings and well wishes to you all. And I start with the name of Allah, the compassionate and merciful, and I testify that there is no deity to worship except Allah, and that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his slave servant and messenger. And I ask Allah to guide our hearts and our tongues and our hands, and I seek his refuge from the evils of disbelief and poverty, from misleading and being misled, and from deceiving and being deceived. All right, look, I'll cut to it. First thing, I was chatting with my man, and we're talking about colorism and racism again, by the way. I was chatting with my man earlier today, my colleague, my co-worker. He just got back into the city that we're working in, although we're not back at work yet. And he is of Bengali origin, Bangladeshi origin, and himself is from the UK. He considers himself to be black and his people to be black, whether they know it or not, and they don't know it. And he prefers to marry a Muslim woman who's black, African, preferably from Sudan and Somalia, because the chances of them being Muslim are very high. His preference is a black woman. He asked me, though, why it is that black women, if they're not Muslim, date only black men, and if they're Muslim, pretty much marry only black men. And I had to really think about that. Now, sisters, those of you listening, I'm going to tell you what answer I gave him that I know about. If there's something that I missed, feel free to write in the comments and tell me. If I make any mistakes, then please count them as honest mistakes. Charge it to my head and not my heart, in other words. No harm meant. If anybody assumes an argumentative tone, I'm going to delete the comments, of course, and block you. If somebody merely just corrects me, not assuming an argumentative tone, then we can build and learn. I can learn something. Maybe you can too. But I had to explain to my man, look, even though you woke so you know that you're black, you're darker than I am, and your hair is darker than what my hair used to be. You have a better shot at getting a black woman to marry you than I have at getting one to marry me. And I've been married to 2 black women religiously, 1 legally. No, not at the same time, but so what if I was? Bottom line, been married to 2. Religious marriages, legally been married to 1. I ain't with either one of them now. I was never the one to leave. I let them choose whether they were going to stay or they were going to leave. In the end, in the same situations in which I've seen women stay with much darker brothers, they chose to not work it out with me. And I did not do anything to provoke them. I did not harm them, cheat on them, never put my hands on them in a rough manner. Didn't do any of these things that would force a woman to leave. I did not abuse any substances. I always went in with a sense of responsibility and showed it. But if ever there was any struggle, and God tests you with a struggle at some point, but if ever there was one, I was not worth working it out for, even if some other man might be, in situations where other black men were. Bottom line is, you see, what I learned, I told him all of this, and I said to him, when I was younger, black women would say that I was quite ugly or quite cute, but I never heard he's normal or he's all right. I shouldn't say never, but I rarely heard it. The few times I heard it, maybe twice, there were looks exchanged that showed that she didn't mean it. So I still didn't know if I was back to being really ugly or being really cute in these 2 ladies' eyes. I was grown before I found out that hardly anybody thought I was ugly. I was an adult. I was about 23 or 24 before I found out that hardly anybody thought I was ugly. So why does some of them act like it? It was because of my shade, my complexion. Some of them assumed that I thought that I was the stuff and great looking, so they had to knock me down. based on an assumption. They didn't know that I had already been told that I was really ugly by some and really cute by others. And so therefore I was actually in a state of confusion. Neither certainty nor of dejection and depression, merely confusion. Which one is it? I figured it's normal because everybody's got to have their own opinion. Kind of thought it was normal until I got old enough to critically think and analyze and realize that it wasn't averaging out. If I can go either way, then that means I would also fall in the middle sometimes. He's all right, or he's normal looking, or it depends on what he's wearing that day. And that was one thing I did not hear. He's in the middle. Depends on what he's wearing. It depends on how he acts. His looks could become either way based on who he actually is. I never heard that. Never did. It was either too much of one or too much of the other. That was it. Nothing else. Except for those 2 times I mentioned. Unless I may have forgotten 3 or 4, but nobody ever said it like they meant it, definitely. And I had to tell him, if I am a black man, and I was generally speaking not given the time of day because I was light-skinned, and I was expected to accept less from black women because I was light-skinned. I mean, I was literally expected to tolerate less. I mean, tolerate worse treatment and accept less good treatment. This was true, which is what they would do for an ugly guy. If I was treated like an ugly guy because I was light-skinned by women who didn't even find me ugly, what do you think they're going to do in the case of a man who, even if he knows he's black, his people don't know that he's black? I mean, my people know that they black. The Creoles know they black. But you're talking about Bangladesh, where they don't even count themselves as black in general. Then, in that case, what do you think these women are going to do? It's not hatred all the time, but it could be defensive. Because you have to keep in mind, see, Creoles, my tribe, so to speak, within the African American culture and group of people, ethnicity, within them was stereotyped for being very color struck. There were those who were and those who were not. But the stereotype was the Creole. Creoles are light skinned and they're color struck. Most Creoles ain't light skinned. A lot of them are not color struck. But the stereotype is they're light skinned, they look mixed, and they're color struck. Bottom line. And yes, I was pretty much, I mean, even Creole women weren't trying to hear it. I didn't live anywhere where you had a whole lot of Creoles in one place, but nonetheless, Creole women would look at me like, we ain't trying to hear it. Creole women were going, when I grew up, it changed. They started going for darker skinned brothers. They didn't care what their mothers and grandmothers said. They started going for chocolate brothers. And they're chocolate people that are Creole, so they could find them. Same culture, same background, same understandings, just nobody knows he's Creole when you see him. Now she has validated herself as a real black woman because she got her dark-skinned man. And if she's Creole, she went against the Creole stereotype to do it. She went against the rest of her people to get this dark-skinned man. Never mind, that was actually a fad for the young women. Your people are stereotyped for being lighter skinned than us, which might be true on average, and being color struck. And not knowing that they black, whereas Creoles knew they were black. What do you think is going to happen? I'm sorry, man. You have a very low chance because even I do. You got a higher chance than I have. And I've been married to 2 of them. It's not your fault. The thing is this, when you're not a white supremacist and you're not brainwashed and you woke, there's still no way to prove it. When you're that pale, you can't prove that you woke, that your mind is up, that you're conscious, and the mental shackles and chains have been broken and shattered. And they years behind you somewhere. You can't prove that to them. In your case, even if they see it in you, what are your parents going to say? And that's what's going through a black woman's mind. What are his parents going to say? And black women are, I mean, there have been cases where black women married outside of their race, and they caught hell from the in-laws. They were sick and tired of dealing with some hell from the in-laws. And when the marriages did not work out, probably because of pressure from his community, they would go back and they had these horror stories they told each other. They have horror stories from when they do date black men, but it's not based on that. It might just be he could never hold down a job. He couldn't keep one. If he got up early and went to these jobs, he couldn't hold down a job. Why? If he makes the same mistake a white guy does, he gets fired. Bottom line. Black men are last hired, first fired. Always have been. So they got horror stories from within where they're not hated. What you think they're going to get from without? Where they've heard that they're hated and looked down upon and considered to be the least beautiful. You see, black women worry about what other folks are going to say. And if a black woman is seen out in public with me and I'm a black man, she's worried, do they think I'm in an interracial relationship? Do they think I'm actually laying down and screwing a white guy? And I ain't even white. Can't pass for white. Their question, do these folks around here think I'm laying down and screwing a man that's not black? That's what they're thinking. Well, however, I do want to say this. There is hope. Because at least this guy who's in his 20s is going against the grain. You see, he's not merely one that says, well, look, let's all mix and then I'm free to fetishize the black woman. But, you know, I probably would turn a black man away if he came to marry my sister. He's not one of them guys. He's one of those guys that says, look, we're Muslim. God made people different colors. We're supposed to be ready for that. We're supposed to be used to that. And it would actually be good if we generally went against the grain and started marrying from other cultures. And this would mean marrying who our parents do not culturally approve of us marrying if they're still good Muslims. So he's looking like if the Bangladeshi community would have a scandal for a Bangladeshi girl marrying a black man, then let's go find the blackest Muslim man we can find and bring him to a Bengali sister if she will approve and get them married. Let's go against the grain. And no, I don't mean a rich and famous black man. I'm talking run-of-the-mill, ain't got no more money than any other black man coming and marrying a Bengali woman. Just to rub this in the faces of the parents, you're wrong, God was right. He's one of them cats. He militant with it. He's like, I prefer a black woman. And it's not just because his community doesn't like that. That's not just that. He looks and he says, objectively speaking, they're more beautiful. They are in better shape. Obviously, they're stronger because they don't get old as fast as everybody else. And when they're poor, they still look good when they get older. Now that, he was mentioning these things. These are the things I can remember him mentioning. So he's looking and he's actively saying, he is openly saying that objectively, the rest of the world is wrong. And actually, they got it backwards. That the rest of the world is asleep because they don't prefer black women. If they knew what was going on, they would prefer black women. And black men would have to compete with everybody else for the love and affection of a black woman. That's what he was saying. So because he's actually this woke, there is hope for the future. But I want to say this to the elders of the Desi and the Arab communities within the Muslim community. This is a very nasty thing I'm going to tell you. To you elders, I'm going to say it anyway. F your culture. F your traditions. F your biases. They are subhuman, inferior, and backwards. Now, I sound like a right-wing Republican saying it, but I'm saying it because you got Islam, which is way up here, and it's a set of system of guidance. It's like having the best GPS in the world. That's good for oceans or roads or walking paths. Like a comprehensive GPS, that's what you got. And you looking at some old hand-drawn map that doesn't factor in a lot of changes since then. And you're going by the hand-drawn map because your daddy liked it. Man, shuck that fit. That's what you like. So you can't say that you like European technology and modern technology, but then when it comes down to things where God is even better than the technology and his guidance system even beats the technology, you turn around and say, well, no, I'm not going to do what the law said. I'm going to do what my grandparents said. Your grandparents were ignorant. Sorry to say, but they was ignorant. They loved you. That's great. You love them. Great. You're supposed to. I love my grandparents too. But when my grandparents are wrong, I can't follow them. If I don't know that they're wrong, I might do it. But when I can see that they're wrong, I can look at the Quran and the Hadith and say, okay, my grandparents were not right about this. I can't follow them. Sorry, you're going to have to admit this. Now, your children are going to defy you. When they do, shut the hell up. Don't say nothing. You may not like it, but shut your mouth. Because if you argue with your kids because they're obeying a law, and you're disobeying a law with your culture, you're more likely to say something that takes you out of the fold of Islam. And if you leave Islam, you're not like a normal run-of-the-mill Jew or Christian who's always been Jewish or Christian. You become an ex-Muslim. Not even a Jewish or Christian person. You're just an ex-Muslim. You're just a traitor, that's all. Because you were defending your culture when God was right to begin with and your culture was wrong. Now, apostasy is not a light matter. But racism and white supremacy, specifically the white supremacist form of racism, it's the only real form there is. But when you follow that, you do run the risk. The very next step is apostasy. I'm telling the truth. If you looking like white is right, black is at the bottom, our culture's right, and we're going to follow that even when Allah said to do something else. If that's what you're doing, your next step is apostasy, because you're going to try to justify it. Now, when you try to justify doing wrong, knowing that it's wrong, that's apostasy. Yeah, so that's my first message. Done with that. Now, my second message right quick. I want to say to the black community in general, Muslim or not, there's been this talk of light skin privilege, and it's been going on, I'm sure, well before 2010. I don't know when the term light skin privilege was coined, but the idea of light skin privilege is about as old as black folks in the Americas, not just the United States, in the Americas. Before there was an independent nation in the Americas, there was such a thing as light skin privilege. It's real. It is real. Very much so. I'm not here to tell you it's not real. I'm here to tell you something about it that even a lot of light-skinned black folk don't know about light-skin privilege. It is real, yes, but it is not as extensive. I'm not saying expensive. I said extensive. It's not as, the other word I was going to say is expansive, but you might not hear that correctly. So it's not as widespread and as comprehensive. It's not as deep as what many of us might think it is. It is, actually it's expensive, but it's not extensive. It is expensive, meaning it has a price. It has conditions. And when they find that those conditions are not being met, they will revoke your light skin privilege. Let me give you one example. Well, let me give you the two reasons, then I'll give you the example. One reason is largely done subconsciously by people who don't hate black folks. They just don't, may not hate them, but nonetheless, that's usually in a personal relationship where they're just friends with you more easily because you're light-skinned. And they're more open with you because you're light-skinned. So they're not identifying with you, they're identifying you with themselves. So therefore they're identifying you as being less pathological and more normal, because they already view themselves as not pathological and very normal. So they're identifying you as such, or closer to it, because you were lighter skinned. And we know about these instances and these scenarios. But if you look on them, you'll notice that they're very personal in nature. It's not something to do with your future. It doesn't affect your finances that much. Then you've got the light skin privilege that does affect the finances, and that is also very real. But this is the one, well, let me just tell you that the light skin privilege that affects your finances, where you get promoted and your chocolate colleague doesn't get promoted quite as easily. Let me tell you about that one. That can be done consciously, it can be done subconsciously. The effect is the same, but they both come at a price. What is the price? They are doing it only to divide black people from black people. That's it. That's why they got it. It is not free. It's not. White supremacy is a religion, and it is going to defend itself from the subconscious minds of those who harbor it, and that's most of the planet. Therefore, whether it is in a personal relationship where you have been befriended by a white person who's really not that friendly to darker people, or it is in a business and financial relationship wherein you have been promoted above other black folks who are darker than you by somebody white, or even by somebody black, usually by somebody white, you need to understand this. It is only done, when white folk do it, it is done to divide black people from black people. If you go up and if you take the privilege and you decide you're going to use the privilege to make a way for the rest of us, that is a noble intention, and you're welcome to try it. But I'm just letting you know, because I have spied. I've used my phenotype, which I never show you all, to spy on white folks. Sometimes it doesn't work, but a lot of times it does, and I've learned a lot about them. I learned a lot about them in a 14-month period. Just a 14-month period in my life. I was in my late 30s learning a lot of the stuff that I learned, how they think, what they're like, being around them, using this. A lot of stuff I'm going to tell you is that the stuff that I learned in my late 30s. I'd say about 5 to 4 years ago. This is what I picked up. And it's what I'm telling you this. This is what I'm telling you because of. This is how I learned the stuff, or this is what I learned that I'm going to tell you. If you decide that you're going to use your privilege, you're going to try to make a way and pave a way for other black folk, our more original looking, tropical appearing sisters and brothers, they're not going to allow that. It's not going to work. I'm not saying don't ever try it. I'm just saying have a backup plan, because you can try that, but you're going to have to force somebody out of something. That part is real. If I get promoted as a manager, really, if I get promoted as a manager at anything, I don't know, let's just take a drugstore as an example, and my chocolate brother comes up and says, man, congratulations on your promotion. I understand that you're the manager now, so if I have a shift request, I have to come to you. Is that correct? Now, that's the right way to ask. I would say, thanks for the congratulations, man. Wish me luck. I'm probably going to need it. I'm in charge of the shift request now. What you got? What's your request? Okay, I want to know if I can do the early shift now. My mother's going to need somebody to look after her in the evenings, but that leaves me free in the mornings. And I know a lot of people don't want the morning shift anyway. I'll take it. I'll be glad to do it. Also, I was wondering if I could give up my holidays. If I could do some work on these holidays, and then I can take some other days off in exchange, like for instance some days off Ramadan or the Eid days as an example. And he tropical, chocolate looking, or she is, and I say, yeah. Now let's say that a white colleague has asked for the same thing, but I give it to the tropical chocolate brother or sister. The one that's in charge of me is going to come and say, why did you give this request instead of that one? I could say, well, it's because there was only one shift left. I had to give one and not the other. Oh, so why did you give it to him instead of to him, or to her instead of to her? Because he asked me first. They're going to find a reason I shouldn't have done it, and I'm going to be in trouble for it. If you use that privilege to reach back and help other black people, you are going to lose your privilege. It will be revoked. If you use that privilege or your position to stand up for other black people, it will be revoked. You will lose it. That's what I'm getting at. Because they're seeing that it doesn't work to divide you from the other. That's what I'm getting at. It does exist. It is real, but it is there for a purpose, and it comes at a price. They're not just doing it because you look better to them. That's not it. No. They're doing it to divide black people from each other. That's what they're doing. That's why. Period. I just wanted y'all to understand that. It does work. But they ain't promoting us because they love us. Some of them may love us a little bit more. They may feel relieved, and it's not really love, it's just relieved. But they ain't doing it because they love us or they respect us more. No, they're doing it because they want to split one from the other. Best believe, if they got their pipe dream, and they were able to come up with something that, genetically harmed everybody that produced above a certain amount of melanin for whatever reason. I don't know. Something that'll kill you if you don't get enough vitamin D, or you don't make enough vitamin D. And so it works and wipes out the darkest of the population. There's still going to be pale brothers left, pale sisters left. Do you think that they're not going to turn on us at that point to have a world free of black people? You think they wouldn't do it? No, they absolutely will. Best believe. When they go and they arrest black folks, when they're looking for black people to arrest to fill these private prisons that are going to close down if they don't get enough inmates and enough revenue, they look for black folks. They might look for the darkest ones first, they might, and the medium shaded ones, but they still looking for light-skinned black folk. They still are. They're not going to let a pale brother go and get a pass unless they can afford to do it, and they can see how it will serve the interest of dividing the community. That's the only way they will do that. They may arrest several people, and if they see that one of them's really pale, like they arrest 5 of us and I'm one of them, and they see that I'm the only one this doggone pale and all the rest of them are healthily melanated, then they might let me go in front of the other one specifically to make it look like I was the rat. This is how they think. I know because they talked like this openly in front of me when I was working with them. I just wanted you all to understand that. Yeah, the privilege is there, but it is not for free. It is for a purpose. I hope that this has been a benefit. Assalamu alaikum, y'all.